To save my brother, I was swept away by the flood. My family adopted a girl to fill the void. 6 years later, I regained my memory. I set out from a remote mountain village, trekking through mountains and rivers to reunite with my family. Mother fainted from crying, while my brother and childhood friend were so moved that their eyes turned red. Not wanting me to be troubled, they sent the fake heiress away without hesitation. Later, I got into an argument with the fake heiress, and to protect her, my brother and childhood friend pushed me down the stairs. While unconscious, I heard their conversation. Sometimes I wish she had died 6 years ago. After all, she is your sister, and she saved you. Don't you think so? Isn't Sarah the one you believe in? My parents fell silent and didn't argue, only advising, she's about to wake up, let's not say anything more. Hearing this, I slowly opened my eyes and asked in confusion, who are you? I am not welcome here. Then let everything return to the starting point. Anyway, I traveled thousands of miles, never for their cheap love. It's the stepping stone out of the mountains. An hour later, the doctor, holding my test results, said thoughtfully, according to the report, the head injury shouldn't cause memory loss. But, Maya, the doctor said you're fine. Did you hear that? Stop pretending. Before the doctor could finish speaking, Charles had already rushed to my bedside in anger, sharply accusing me. 6 years ago, you acted recklessly, and now, the moment you return, you hurt Sarah. Are you only satisfied when you've thrown the Smith family into chaos? Jack also frowned at me. Maya, that's enough. Apologize to Sarah, and we'll consider this matter over. Sarah covered the almost invisible scratch on her face and gave me a smug look. I glared back coldly. Sarah hid behind Mrs. Smith in fear. Mrs. Smith scolded me. Charles was furious. Maya, do you think we're dead? I rolled my eyes. I need to correct you. My surname is Robinson, not Smith. Charles grew even more furious. Are you getting addicted to pretending? The doctor, who had been ignored for a long time, could no longer hold back and stepped forward to separate Charles. Young Master Smith, please calm down and let me finish what I have to say. Pointing at the shadow on the film, the doctor quickly finished speaking before Charles could lose his temper again. It shows here that Miss Smith has unresolved blood clots in her head, which appear to be old injuries from several years ago. Therefore, it is entirely possible, from a medical perspective, that this second impact has caused short-term memory confusion. The ward fell into complete silence. Even Charles, who had been so aggressive just moments ago, froze, a flicker of embarrassment and guilt crossing his face. TSK. It must have been a misperception. Finally, it was Mr. Smith, the head of the household, who spoke. You mean, she doesn't remember us at all? The doctor nodded awkwardly. Theoretically, that is a possibility. Upon hearing this, Mrs. Smith staggered, rushed over, and tightly grabbed my hand, her tears flowing uncontrollably. Maya, have you forgotten even me? I let Mrs. Smith hold on to me, my gaze fixed on her tear-streaked face. Mrs. Smith noticed my reaction, and her eyes instantly filled with hope. Maya, do you remember now? I blinked, my eyes dazed. Auntie, who are you? The address made Mrs. Smith shudder violently. She shook her head in disbelief, tears streaming even more fiercely. How strange, now I have returned to the starting point as they wished. Mrs. Smith can finally proudly show off her impeccable daughter Sarah without worrying that I, the country bumpkin, would make her lose face in her circle of high society ladies. Why is she still so heartbroken? I quietly watched Mrs. Smith until she was so embarrassed by my indifference that she couldn't cry anymore. I turned my head and asked in confusion, are you someone very important to me? Should I not have forgotten you? Of course. Mrs. Smith's eyes reddened again as she said urgently, you really can't remember at all. I am your patron. Charles interrupted Mrs. Smith. He stepped forward, held the agitated Mrs. Smith, and said calmly, you are the sponsored student of our Smith family. Jack, true to his role as Charles's good friend, immediately caught on and nodded in agreement. Yes, Aunt Smith is the kind person who sponsored your education. Mrs. Smith's open mouth froze midair. She looked at her son and Jack, then at me with my confused expression. Tears were on the verge of falling. Her expression was extremely complex. Seeing this, Sarah immediately rushed over and pressed her face against Mrs. Smith's shoulder. Mom, don't be sad over an ungrateful person like her anymore. It's not worth it, you still have me, I'll always be your daughter. Mrs. Smith was so moved that she hugged her tightly in return. I was speechless. She simply turned her face away and looked toward Mr. Smith, who had remained silent all along. Am I really a sponsored student of your family? Mr. Smith hadn't spoken yet. Charles's face suddenly changed, and he exploded on the spot. What do you mean? You don't believe what I said. His chest heaved violently, as if he had suffered a great injustice. If it weren't for you coming to the Smith family out of the blue to thank my mother for her financial support, would this have happened? You fell down the stairs, and the Smith family spent money and effort to treat you. Instead of being grateful, you're questioning us. I'm telling you, the Smith family owes you nothing. I fell down the stairs. I sneered inwardly. It was clearly this person right here, my dear older brother, who pushed me down the stairs. He's putting on such a pitiful act as if he's been terribly wronged. If I had really lost my memory, I might have actually believed it. I waited for him to finish his performance before turning to look at him with a puzzled expression. I didn't even ask you, yet you're explaining so much. Is it a guilty conscience? You, Charles was left speechless by my remark, his face instantly flushing red with anger. Just as I was about to add fuel to the fire, Mr. Smith finally spoke up. You are indeed the impoverished student sponsored by the Smith family. I froze for a moment. Mr. Smith's gaze had already settled on me. His eyes were calm as he looked at me, not as if he were looking at his own biological daughter, but more like he was assessing the value of an object. Anyway, you were injured under the care of the Smith family, so it's only right that we take responsibility. After a moment of thought, he looked up. Since you are a scholarship student sponsored by the Smith family, you can stay with us while you recover and continue your studies. Consider it our way of making it up to you. After saying this, he paused and looked at me, clearly waiting for my response. Mrs. Smith also looked at me nervously. I promptly showed a hint of restraint and unease. Won't this be too much trouble for you? No trouble at all. Make yourself at home. Mrs. Smith shook her head vigorously, as if she had finally found an outlet to express her meager maternal love. And you know you're a troublemaker. Charles snorted coldly. You should be grateful that a country bumpkin like you can even stay in the Smith family. I ignored him directly and continued looking at Mr. and Mrs. Smith, nodding slightly. Then thank you, Uncle Smith and Aunt Smith. Sorry for the trouble. Charles let out another scoff, as if saying, I knew it. You put on a show but ended up agreeing anyway. Jack tugged at his sleeve, signaling him to say less. Then, turning to me, he wore a gentle smile. Maya, don't take it to heart. Charles is just straightforward and a bit blunt with his words, he said, glancing at Charles. He's just worried about you and wants you to settle in comfortably with the Smith family. He means no harm. Charles rubbed his nose and awkwardly looked away, but in the end, he didn't say anything harsh. I nodded perfunctorily. Who cares what this idiot thinks? Who cares? I don't want to be a member of the Smith family, but I am going to stay, right here in the upper town. The elders in the village all say, staying in this remote mountain village will lead to no future, no ambition, no money. That won't do. I still need to be ambitious, to stand out. I followed them back to the Smith family villa. As soon as I entered, I passed by the nanny's room, caught a glimpse of the worn-out backpack inside, and said with a smile, this must be my room, it's really nice. The Smith family members behind me all stopped in their tracks, and for a moment, no one responded. The atmosphere gradually turned eerie. Finally, Sarah broke the silence with tears. Maybe it's better to let my sister move back into my room, even though it's filled with memories from my childhood. It's okay. Her tears began to fall. Mrs. Smith immediately hugged her, comforting her with concern. Baby, be good. We won't let her have the room. Charles's face darkened. Maya, we've already allowed you to stay with the Smith family. Why are you still not satisfied and forcing Sarah to give up her room? Jack shook his head at me, his tone filled with disappointment. Can you not be so assertive? I was completely taken aback by the scolding. A question mark slowly formed in my mind. But I still patiently waited for the family to finish their performance before speaking, my tone utterly sincere. Are you all mistaken? I pointed to the nanny's room with a puzzled expression. I'm just a student sponsored by your family. Isn't it perfectly normal and reasonable for me to stay in this room? Mrs. Smith and Charles froze for a moment, finally realized, yes, I am their sponsored student now. Everyone present looked at each other, their faces turning pale and then flushed. So embarrassed they could dig out a 3-bedroom apartment, I sneered inwardly. They reacted so strongly. It's just that I recall when I first returned to the Smith family, I briefly stayed in Sarah's room. At that time, the Smith family insisted on sending Sarah away, who knew she refused to leave, no matter what, and stood guard outside the door day and night. Later, Sarah couldn't hold on any longer and fainted. I had become a sinner without the capacity to tolerate others. After that, I voluntarily moved to the first floor. Later on, it led to today's dispute. I was pushed down the stairs by them together. At this moment, both Charles and Jack fell silent, pursing their lips. Mrs. Smith uncomfortably pushed Sarah away, looking at Mr. Smith as if wanting to say something but hesitating. Mr. Smith cleared his throat lightly, trying to salvage the situation. You're injured and need to rest. How about we arrange a guest room for you on the second floor? No. Sarah shook her head desperately, her eyes red and teary. How can my sister stay in the guest room? Let's give her my room instead. I don't mind, really, I don't mind. Once again, she successfully drew the entire family's attention to herself. Watching this recurring scene play out before me, I sighed inwardly but muttered under my breath, do other prominent families, like the Charles family and the Jack family, also treat scholarship students this well? Charles and Jack both stiffened at once. Charles tried to save face. Sarah is just naive and can't bear to see others suffer. Don't push your luck. Oh, Mr. Smith also wanted to quickly end this farce and made the final decision. You'll stay here. Mrs. Smith's lips moved slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but her gaze met Sarah's tear-filled eyes. In the end, she patted my hand and said, let me know if you need anything. I nodded casually. Mr. Smith gave a faint nod, satisfied with my quiet demeanor. The driver will take you and Sarah to school together tomorrow. The farce has finally ended. Mrs. Smith is immersed in her self-touching maternal love. Charles thinks I know my place now. Jack believes the matter has finally settled. They each have their own hidden agendas, but they don't know. This current situation is exactly what I wanted. I lowered my eyelashes. Springboard. It's already set up. The next day, I got on the car. I found that besides Sarah, Charles was also there. I gave a slight nod as a greeting and bent down to slide into the back seat. Charles scoffed in dissatisfaction. Some people eat and live off others, yet still put on this holier-than-thou act for whom? Brother, don't say that about Maya. She's not feeling well, Sarah said in a sweet, coquettish voice. How come you have time to accompany me to school today? Aren't I just worried that you might get bullied again? Charles hinted meaningfully. I have to personally protect my precious little sister. He glanced at me arrogantly. I was studying with my headphones on. I happened to look up and caught his provocative glance, but since I couldn't hear what he was saying, I could only see his eyebrows and eyes darting around, which looked quite comical. I couldn't hold back and burst out laughing. I'm listening to English. Do you need something? Charles's face instantly turned as dark as the bottom of a pot. What good students can a shabby little mountain village produce? Probably speaking with a country bumpkin accent. Do you even know what American English is? Can you understand it? Don't pretend if you don't. I shrugged and replied calmly, isn't that what I'm learning? Charles choked back his words and scoffed. You'd better get a decent ranking in the mock exam. Don't end up at the bottom and disgrace the Smith family name. Hearing this, I turned to Sarah, who was gloating with delight, and kindly reminded her, did you hear that? Your brother told you not to disgrace the Smith family. Sarah never expected the flames of conflict to reach her. She was an art student, and her academic performance was quite average. Her face flushed red, and her large eyes looked aggrievedly toward the front row. Brother, Charles's expression froze. He instinctively wanted to defend Sarah, but the words had come from his own mouth, and now there was no right way to respond. Angrily, he turned his head and stared ahead, ignoring even Sarah. The annoying guy finally shut up. I closed my eyes contentedly and continued memorizing vocabulary. Arrived at school, Sarah was afraid I'd cling to her, so she quickly got out of the car and went in with a few of her girlfriends. I followed slowly behind with my backpack. Overhearing them talking about me without any hesitation. Sarah, is this the freeloader staying at your place? Not bad looking, though, tisk. He looks honest, but he actually got into a fight with Sarah and ended up in the hospital. Serves him right. Ugh, who wants to go to school with such a dirty, poor person? Who knows if they have any diseases? I even want to ask for leave and go home. You're lucky. Sarah has to face her every day. It's disgusting. Everyone should be smart and not hang out with her. It's just bad luck. Thanks to their widespread announcement, as soon as I entered the new class, I felt a clear sense of isolation. The classmates all kept their distance from me, afraid that I might actually have the virus. I simply made the most of the time to absorb knowledge. I just took out the book. Suddenly, a strange text message popped up on my phone. Maya, I heard you lost your memory. Send me an 88 yuan red envelope. And I'll tell you all about the crushes you've had since childhood, who you lost fights to, honest and reliable, guaranteed to satisfy. What the hell? I deleted the message in disbelief and promptly blocked the number. Keep studying with my head down. Although when I was in the village, my mother often tutored me. My mother is very knowledgeable and knows much more than the senior teachers here. But I still need to adapt to the teaching style here. These days of burying myself in study are quite comfortable, but the only downside is that there are always a few annoying people around. Sarah and her little clique always deliberately discuss high-end luxury brands in front of me, then they all turn to look at me, waiting for me to embarrass myself. Maya, do you know what it is? I usually put down my pen and politely shake my head. I don't know. If I don't cooperate, they will keep pestering me. After they burst into exaggerated laughter and then spit out a country bumpkin at me, I can then peacefully continue reading. This kind of scene has almost become a daily routine. After school that day, I went to the restroom and encountered a few unfamiliar girls clearing the area. I glanced at them, looked at the classmates who had run off, thought for a moment, and decided to leave as well, but was stopped. Hey, who said you could leave? A girl pointed at me. I stopped. Is there something you need? Actually, yes. She walked over with a cold smile and patted my face. Don't like the look of you. Got a problem with that? Fighting is not allowed on school grounds. I stated the school rule. She laughed heartily, and a few girls behind her joined in the laughter. Silly girl. There are no cameras here. Just tell the teacher you fell by yourself. Isn't that simple? I suddenly understood and nodded. Oh, that makes sense. I took off my backpack and carefully placed it on the clean sink to avoid getting it wet. Then, I stretched my wrists and smiled at the clearly stunned girls. It's been a while since I played, so I'll warm up first. Are you coming one by one, or all at once? The good news is, these girls are probably doing this for the first time. They're not very tough. The bad news is, one of them got away, so I was called to the parents' meeting. Charles came in person with a grim face to get me. The Smith family atmosphere was tense. Before I even entered the door, I could hear Sarah stirring up trouble. Mom and Dad, look at Maya. She just started school and already dares to hit someone. Now the whole school is saying that the Smith family raises nothing but savages. Sob, how am I supposed to face people and make friends at school from now on? Mrs. Smith comforted gently. When she comes back, your father will definitely teach her a lesson, for the first time. Charles didn't gloat but looked at me with pity before pushing the door open. Dad, Mom, we're back. The next second, an ashtray flew over, grazing my forehead before landing on the floor. Maya, how dare you come back? Mrs. Smith was startled to see me bleeding and quickly stopped the furious Mr. Smith. How could you hit so hard? The child is bleeding. She turned to me, her tone anxious. Maya, hurry and apologize to your dad. To Uncle Smith, tell him you'll never do it again. Don't stop me, Mr. Smith pushed Mrs. Smith aside. Today, I'm going to teach her a lesson about the Smith family's rules. He seemed furious, his hand trembling as he pointed at me. A child raised in the countryside just doesn't know how to behave properly. It wasn't me who started it. I glanced at Sarah, who was watching with amusement, and calmly explained. She met my gaze, then guiltily looked away. Then you must have done something annoying, Mr. Smith didn't believe it and grew even angrier. The students at school are either rich or noble, all well-mannered and well-bred, unlike you who grew up in the countryside. If you don't provoke anyone, who would bully you? Mrs. Smith and Charles also showed agreement. Look, This is the deeply ingrained mindset of the Smith family. In their perception, poverty is the original sin. I paused for a moment, raised my hand to cover the wound, and said with a bitter smile. They called me a bastard with no father or mother, and said I was born with a father but raised without a mother. I couldn't take it, I sniffled, and tears rolled down at just the right moment. Why do they say such things about me? I clearly also have a mother, someone who cares for me, someone who loves me. Mrs. Smith shuddered, her maternal love reaching its peak at that moment. She lunged forward to shield me. If you want to hit her, you'll have to kill me first. She was just defending her parents. What did she do wrong? Mr. Smith had long fallen silent, but he was too proud to ever apologize. After a long while, he sighed, his eyes showing a hint of guilt as he looked at me. If you need anything in your daily life, just tell the housekeeper directly. Charles also stepped forward and patted my shoulder, his tone full of pride. Well played. In the middle of the night, I woke up thirsty. I went out to get some water and noticed the light was on in the break room. Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, and Charles were still awake, chatting quietly inside. Is this really the right thing for us to do? Our own daughter is being mocked at school for having no parents, and it feels like a knife is twisting in my heart. Mrs. Smith's sobs were stifled. Mr. Smith remained silent. Charles questioned, Mom, are you thinking of sending Sarah away? Of course not. Mrs. Smith anxiously defended herself. How could I bear to? Sarah is my daughter too. Isn't this the best outcome now? Although Charles is usually foolish, his logic was clear at this moment. Maya stays with the Smith family as a sponsored student. You can see her every day, and Sarah can continue to stay by your side. Nothing has changed. Mrs. Smith was persuaded but still hesitated. What if Maya remembers? What's there to be afraid of? Charles said irritably. It was her who couldn't tolerate Sarah in the first place. Isn't refusing to acknowledge her just to teach her a lesson. At worst, I'll apologize to her later. All right, we'll just make it up to her more in the future. It's very late, everyone should go to sleep. Mr. Smith ended the conversation. I waited until the others had walked far away, then slowly walked into the break room. When returning to the room, I caught a glimpse of a dark figure darting past the corner of the stairs. Judging by the silhouette, it looks like Sarah. Did she hear it too? Whatever. I shook my head, closed the door without a care. The mock exam is in 2 weeks. That's what I should really be concerned about. If I don't do well, I won't have the face to go back and see my mom. After that day, the Smith family's attitude toward me has changed a bit. When Mr. Smith gave Sarah pocket money, he occasionally remembered to give me a share too, and the amount was not small. As a small scholarship student, how could I possibly deserve this? I was moved and accepted it every time, then quietly transferred it to another card. This is my startup fund for leaving the Smith family in the future. Soon, the stressful mock exam ended. As I walked out of the school gate with the crowd, my phone buzzed with another message. Maya, you actually blocked me. Just wait, I'm coming for you. A new number, but the same familiar tone. I wrinkled my nose. I dragged this number into the blacklist as well. Back at the Smith family, the villa was quiet. I asked the nanny and found out that the Smith family had accompanied Sarah to another city for her art school re-examination. They might be gone for several days, the nanny said. I said, oh, had a meal, and then went back to my room to read, glad to have some peace and quiet. A week later, the mock exam results are out. 621 points, ranked first in the grade. I hope I didn't embarrass Mom, I thought, stroking my chin. 621 points. The full score is only 650. How is that possible? Charles's startled cry jolted me awake. As I looked up, I saw the travel-worn members of the Smith family standing before me, staring in shock at the report card in my hand. Mrs. Smith snatched the report card and checked it 3 times, her face flushed with excitement. Mrs. Chen's daughter next door scored 580 and bragged about it all morning. Let's see what she has to say now. Good, very good, Mr. Smith kept saying, his eyes showing warmth toward me for the first time. Obviously, it also made him feel proud. He is a businessman, and deep down, he sees everything in terms of profit and value. Wow, Sarah broke down. She had failed her art school entrance exam and was already in a terrible mood. Now, comparing herself to me made it even harder for her to accept. She ran upstairs crying. Charles glared at me and quickly chased after her. I curled my lips indifferently, not wanting to be alone with Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I simply got up and went out to the yard for some fresh air. I happened to overhear the conversation between Charles and Sarah on the terrace. "You're different from her. What other path does a poor wretch like her have besides burying herself in books? The starting point of your life is the finish line for her. You're going to be an internationally renowned designer someday. Why compare yourself to her? What a downer." I pursed my lips and quickly turned to leave. After the mock exam results came out, the holiday has also arrived. This is the last short holiday before the college entrance exam. I packed a few pieces of clothing and picked up that old backpack, washed to a faded color, opened the door. I ran right into the Smith family, who were loaded with bags and planning to go on vacation during the short holiday. Everyone stared at each other in surprise. It was a bit awkward for a moment. Mrs. Smith pretended not to be awkward. "Maya, where are you going?" I replied calmly, "Going home to take a look." Mrs. Smith choked up a bit, somewhat hurt. "Isn't this your home?" I was horrified. "How could it be? I don't have the surname Smith, Auntie." Mrs. Smith choked up again. Mr. Smith stepped in to smooth things over. "Maya, you'll be alone if you go back. Why not join us? I'll cover the expenses." "Thank you, Uncle Smith, but that won't be necessary." I shook my head. "I still have to go back and feed the chickens." Feeding the chickens. Sarah burst out laughing, but the next second, she seemed to remember something. Her eyes lit up, and she hugged Mrs. Smith's arm, acting coquettishly. "Mom, I want to go to Maya's hometown too. It sounds so fun." As soon as Charles heard that Sarah was going, he immediately chimed in. "If Sarah is going, I'm going too," Jack also said with a smile. "That's quite interesting." The end. The situation turned into Mr. and Mrs. Smith going on vacation alone. "The rest will go back with me, Maya. Thank you for being willing to take us to experience life." Sarah was pulling her luggage beside me, looking completely innocent. I was utterly speechless inside. No, did anyone even ask for my opinion just now? It was clearly the Smith family forcing a confrontation. Just as our group was about to set off, a defiant male voice rang out. "Maya, how dare you block me twice? Edward have crossed oceans to come back and settle the score with you. Today, you better give me an explanation." Charles and I, along with the others, all turned to look. A young man stood at the door, looking incredibly handsome, with even more youthful vigor than Jack. Under the gaze of our several pairs of eyes, Edward's confidence instantly waned by half. He scratched his head and stammered, What are you staring at? Haven't you seen a handsome guy before?" I stared at him for quite a while. I only recognized him by those iconic peach blossom eyes. Is this person in front of me really the chubby little Edward from my childhood? If Jack is my childhood sweetheart, then Edward is my sworn enemy from childhood to adulthood. We've caught each other's most embarrassing secrets, had the fiercest fights, and exchanged the harshest words. The year I got into trouble, he was sent abroad by the Jiang family to study. No one said a word. Sarah, however, lit up and said, "Brother Edward, why didn't you tell me you were back in the country?" Edward turned away in disgust, as if he couldn't stand the sight of her. "Who are you? Do I need to report to you just because I'm returning to my country?" He looked at me, raising his chin. "Maya, where are you going?" Before I could answer, Sarah chimed in. "We're going to Maya's hometown." "Maya, hometown?" Edward let out an "oh," drawing out the tone. His gaze swept over the group, lingering longest on Charles. That look seemed to see through everything, making Charles feel uneasy all over. He suddenly clapped his hands and said, "Let's go, together." Charles, Jack, Sarah, I was speechless. My hometown is very remote. The transportation is also inconvenient. After getting off the train, you need to transfer to a minivan, then take a tractor, and finally walk for another 20 minutes to get there. Sarah kept complaining the whole way. "What a terrible place. It's so dirty. I wish I hadn't come." "I'm tired of listening," I said coldly. "You can leave right now." She immediately fell silent, pouting. Charles and Jack immediately gave me warning looks. I ignored them. My gaze went past them and landed on the floral figure beside the wooden door. The moment I saw clearly, my eyes welled up, and I rushed over. Mom caught me, her eyes also reddening. She reached out to touch my face but stopped when her fingers neared the wound on my forehead, her expression turning tense. I grinned. It's fine, it doesn't hurt anymore. She touched my head again, then my stomach. I nodded vigorously. I've been eating well, sleeping well, and I've gained 5 pounds. Mom finally smiled. She sighed with a smile. You become fairer and prettier. She then pointed to the people behind me. Are they your friends? Before I could answer, she had already turned around to fetch a small wooden stool from the yard, signaling me to quickly invite everyone to sit. I nodded, and was just about to make an introduction. Sarah suddenly clutched her stomach and burst into laughter, her tone mocking. Maya, you're calling a country bumpkin your mom, and she's mute too. That's hilarious. Mom's eyes dimmed, her hand froze in midair, her face at a loss. With a cold expression, I walked up to Sarah and, without any warning, suddenly raised my hand and slapped her. No manners. How the Smith family treats me, I don't care, but Mom is my bottom line. You dare hit me. Sarah covered her face and screamed hysterically. The supposedly dead Charles suddenly came to life, rushing over to shield Sarah behind him. Maya, Sarah was just joking. Is it really that serious? Jack also frowned deeply. Maya, you're really going too far. Apologize now. Seeing that she had backup, Sarah stuck her tongue out at me smugly. My blood boiled, and I rolled up my sleeves, ready to step forward and argue. Edward suddenly clicked his tongue. What if I hit you? Sarah, did you forget to brush your teeth this morning? Your mouth is so foul, I could smell it from a mile away. As soon as he said this, Sarah's expression changed, and she covered her mouth, feeling both embarrassed and angry. Edward, however, wasn't finished yet. He shook his head as he looked at the other two. Is this the behavior of the future heirs of the Smith family and the Cheng family, unable to distinguish right from wrong, and incapable of speaking properly? Truly, each generation is worse than the last. Charles and Jack's faces sank instantly. That night, I didn't cook for the Smith siblings and Jack. The three of them, full of pride, saw that there was no food for them. They pulled long faces, slammed the door, and went back to their rooms to sleep. Seeing this, Edward casually went to pull my mom. The nuisance is gone. Mom, come and eat. I glared at him. This is my mom. He raised an eyebrow. Our mom, all right, considering he helped me today. I can't be bothered to argue with his mouth. Early the next morning, I'm feeding the chickens in the backyard. The three members of the Smith family came out of the room, looking pale and clearly very hungry. Edward stood next to me and took a big bite of the pancake in his hand. This pancake is so delicious. Their faces all turned green with anger. They stormed back into the room angrily. Unfortunately, at lunchtime, Mom still softened her heart and cooked their share. I sighed helplessly. My mother is just too kind-hearted, but I don't want to tell her about the messy affairs of the Smith family and worry her for no reason. I might as well just let her be. After dinner, I picked up my clothes and headed to the stream. Upon hearing about going to the river to do laundry, Edward eagerly followed, saying he wanted to see. Meanwhile, the three members of the Smith family, for some inexplicable reason, also trailed behind me from a distance. As I crouched by the river, working diligently, Charles dawdled over, not saying a word, just standing there. I couldn't be bothered with him and continued with my work. After what felt like a long time, he suddenly spoke up, his expression nostalgic. I remember when we were kids. We always went to the countryside to play, to catch fish, to wade in the water. Everything seemed so interesting back then. He paused and murmured softly, later, during the flash flood, it was my sister who saved me. He stopped, his nostalgic gaze resting on the top of my head. I wiped the sweat off my forehead, looked up with a cooperative expression. You mean your sister Sarah saved you? Then you really should thank her properly. Charles's expression froze. He opened his mouth, as if wanting to explain, but seeing my sincere and persuasive demeanor, he suddenly felt a bit powerless. Just then, Sarah called out to him from a distance, "Brother, come quickly." He gave me a complicated look, and then slunk away. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of the return trip. Early in the morning, Mrs. Robinson packed a large bag of local specialties and took us to the roadside. Mr. and Mrs. Smith were already waiting there. They came back early from their trip, just turned out of the mountain road. I heard a commotion up ahead. I went out to take a look. It turned out to be the nearby villagers. gathered around the Smith family's motorcade, discussing it. Many people spend their entire lives in these mountains and have never seen such an impressive motorcade. Naturally, they couldn't help but express their amazement. Some curious onlookers asked Mr. and Mrs. Smith, "You must be the biological parents Maya went through so much trouble to find, right? You've really found a treasure." Maya is a hard-working child and excels in her studies. "Where is Maya? Your wealthy parents have come to pick you up." The villagers' words were filled with joy for me. The Smith family is skilled at disguising their true feelings, and the villagers are simple and honest, so naturally they couldn't see the impatience and disdain in Mr. and Mrs. Smith's eyes. I was about to step in to defuse the situation. The next moment, Mr. Smith calmly said, "You've misunderstood. We are not Maya's parents." Mrs. Smith nodded vigorously, "Yes. We're here to pick up our children and take them home." I stopped in my tracks. The villagers stirred with unrest. Wrong, just as I thought. How could Maya be so lucky? If she were really their biological child, would she act like this? "Look at how cold she is. She's not even as warm as the villagers are to a lost dog." "But that lady looks exactly like Maya." Mrs. Smith, who was called Lady, looked very displeased. Mr. Smith's face also turned pale and ashen. I quickly walked over. "Uncle Bob, Auntie, you've got the wrong idea," I explained. "These two are the kind-hearted people from the city who are sponsoring my education, not my parents." Upon hearing this, Mr. and Mrs. Smith's expressions softened slightly. I pulled Mrs. Robinson aside and said, "Everyone, please don't say such things anymore. My mom would be upset if she heard." Mrs. Smith's expression looked even worse than before. The villagers, realizing it was a misunderstanding and that it was mealtime, simply dispersed. I gave Mrs. Robinson a few words of advice. I followed the Smith family as they were about to get into the car. Sarah slammed the door shut and snorted through the car window. "Maya, weren't you so capable these past few days? You didn't even give us food. If you're so tough, don't ride back in our car." Charles draped his arm over Jack's shoulder and sneered, "You poor thing. Go take your slow green train." Mr. Smith frowned and said nothing. Mrs. Smith, upset that I had called someone else Mom, was even less inclined to talk to me. Edward cursed, "Fuck," and jumped out of the passenger seat. "This piece of junk isn't even fit for a dog." The Smith family's motorcade left. Edward curled his lips and turned to say to me, "Wait, my family's car will be here soon." I paused for a moment. "You didn't have to come down. That car reeks of scumbag." I was afraid I'd throw up. I couldn't help but laugh. Seeing me laugh, Edward cleared his throat and turned his face away. Before long, Edward's car arrived. Mrs. Robinson suddenly gripped my hand tightly. "My girl, wait for Mommy to come find you." I was taken aback. "Mom, don't wander off. When I go to college, I'll work hard to earn money and bring you out." Mrs. Robinson pursed her lips, shook her head, and pushed me firmly into the car. The car started. In the rearview mirror, I saw her gesturing, "Good luck with the college entrance exam." After returning to the city, I was clearly not welcome in the Smith family. Sarah's hostility toward me became more blatant. For example, at this moment, "Some people are just ungrateful wolves that can't be tamed. Her mother treats her so well, yet she only acknowledges that mute village woman." Mrs. Smith gave me a cold glance and said loudly, "Sweetheart, Mommy will take you to buy the latest release from Chanel." She picked up her bag and pulled Sarah out. I silently shoveled rice into my mouth. I scoffed inwardly. So much drama. Mr. Smith didn't leave. He called me into the study and encouraged me to work harder in my studies, aiming to get into a prestigious university to bring honor to the Smith family. He didn't seem to be considering my future. Instead, it felt like he saw me as another suitable tool for a business alliance through marriage. I gave a perfunctory response. I found an excuse to leave, saying I needed to study. The day after the Gaokao ended, the Smith family held a grand banquet at the Cloud Top restaurant. For no other reason, this day was Sarah's coming-of-age ceremony. It's also mine, they naturally know. But no one cares. Early in the morning, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, Charles, and others anxiously went out. Before the door closed, I faintly heard Sarah mutter a complaint. Many prominent families stood up the Smith family at the last minute. The whole place was in chaos. "Need to reschedule. This is going to be a hassle." I suddenly realized, no wonder they were in such a hurry. No one called me, so naturally, I wouldn't go looking for trouble. When the time came, I leisurely took a taxi there. As soon as I walked into the entrance of the venue, Mr. Smith's face darkened. "Look at you, what kind of appearance is this?" I looked down at myself. "Clean and neat casual wear, isn't this good? Comfortable and relaxed." Of course, I received Mr. Smith's message telling me to dress nicely, but I ignored it outright. I never intended to please them in the first place. Sarah covered her mouth and snickered, mouthing the words to me. "Country bumpkin." I gave her a faint glance. Charles grew impatient. "Hurry up and go in, don't stand here embarrassing us." The Smith family all headed towards the banquet hall together, but they hadn't walked far. They all stopped. The venue next to the Smith family was unexpectedly packed with people. This banquet hall is generally not open to the public, and the Smith family couldn't book it this time. If I'm not mistaken, among that group of people, many were actually from prominent families invited by Mr. Smith, who couldn't attend due to last-minute matters. The Smith family was stunned. For a long time, no one could react. Mr. Smith's pride was severely wounded, and his hand holding the wine glass turned white. Charles, sharp-eyed, spotted a good friend who had stood him up and rushed over to stop him. "You said you were busy, so why are you here?" The young man was startled, and after recognizing Charles, his expression turned awkward. "Bro, I couldn't refuse this. If you can't refuse others, how come you can refuse me?" Charles looked as if he had been slapped hard, his face flushed red. The man looked as if he were constipated, with some words on the tip of his tongue that he forcefully swallowed back. "Let me see who dares to intercept someone from the Smith family and embarrass the Smiths." With that, Charles was about to charge inside. The young master grabbed him tightly. "Don't be foolish, that's the Robinson family." The Robinson family, an upper city family with a centuries-old legacy. Charles wasn't being foolish, but he was being stupid. What Robinson family? "James family, no one can stop me today." He rolled up his sleeves and was about to charge forward, but Mr. Smith stopped him. "Get back here, Chief Robinson." Almost simultaneously, a chorus of greetings from a group of people drowned out Mr. Smith's voice. The crowd parted to both sides. A spirited elderly man was being supported by a beautiful woman as he walked over. I glanced over lazily, as my gaze swept over. It came to a halt. "Mom," I called out instinctively. The elderly woman looked at me and laughed heartily. "Wendy, is this your precious daughter, Maya? Good child, come over to Grandpa." I looked blankly at Sue Wan, also known as Mrs. Robinson. She smiled and nodded at me. I trotted over, stood at attention, and said, "Hello, Grandpa." Old man Robinson laughed even more heartily and patted my shoulder with satisfaction. He turned to the guests and declared with authority, "Everyone, I'd like to take this opportunity to formally introduce my daughter and granddaughter, Sam Robinson's daughter and granddaughter." All around, there were sounds of congratulations and flattery. From the back of the crowd, Edward, dressed in a suit, walked toward me. "Miss Robinson." Together, I smiled and followed him into the venue, leaving behind Sarah, full of jealousy, and the pale-faced members of the Smith family. The next day, Mr. Robinson and Mrs. Robinson came to pick me up in person. The Robinson family's child does not need your financial support. The members of the Smith family had varied expressions. When leaving the Smith family villa, I didn't look back. Half a month later, the college entrance exam results were announced. I was the top scorer in this year's college entrance exam. The media is vying to report on it. Only a scholarly family like the Robinsons could raise such an outstanding descendant. Grandpa couldn't stop smiling. He immediately transferred a huge sum of money to me, saying it was to support my college development. During this time, the Smith family remained silent. Only Charles, for some inexplicable reason, went live to smear my reputation. The top scorer in the college entrance exam has talent but no virtue. Without the Smith family's support, where would they be today? But he didn't expect that someone would immediately dig it up. I was only briefly sponsored by the Smith family for a month, and my situation was not good. I was even isolated at school, led by the Smith family's daughter. Charles and Sarah were criticized so harshly that they turned off the comments. The media dug deeper and were surprised to discover I grew up in the mountains, and my excellence is largely due to Mrs. Robinson's nurturing. Mrs. Robinson was the top scorer in the National College entrance examination of her year. I was only surprised for a moment, then I thought it was only natural. I had long noticed that Mrs. Robinson was different from others. Her knowledge and demeanor were unlike those of a person from the countryside. She just never wanted to talk about the past, so I never asked. It was only when I returned to the Robinson family that I found out. My mother had a strong personality and, unwilling to accept an arranged marriage, she directly chose to break ties with the Robinson family. Later, she had an accident and became mute. This was a huge blow to her, who had always been the apple of her eye. When she wanted to end it all, she found me. She had also asked someone to help me find my family, but the Smith family had given up the search shortly after adopting Sarah and applied for a declaration of death for the missing Maya. There was no immediate follow-up. Mrs. Robinson then raised me as her own. Later on, I regained my memory. I traveled a long distance to search for my relatives. All of this was dug up by curious netizens. It all started because someone thought I looked very similar to Mrs. Smith. This has gotten out of hand. The Smith family was exposed for protecting the fake heiress and treating the real heiress as a sponsored student. An absurd act. The most heartbreaking part. Back then, I got into trouble to save Charles. Charles. Has your conscience been eaten by a dog? The entire Smith family was scolded to the point of being drenched in dog's blood. Charles even became synonymous with ingratitude. In the end, someone summed it up. Fortunately, Maya has the Robinson family who truly love her. I received a call from Mrs. Smith. On the phone, she asked cautiously, Maya, would you like to come home for a meal tomorrow? No, thank you, Auntie. Her voice choked with emotion. But tomorrow is my. I didn't want to hear it, said I had something to do, and hung up. After putting down the phone, I sat on the sofa, my nose tingling with emotion. Tomorrow, it's Mrs. Smith's birthday. I truly longed for the warmth that belonged to my biological parents, but I couldn't forget. When I first regained my memories, I frantically searched online for information about the Smith family. I wanted to see how they were doing. The most popular one that popped up, it's an interview video from a few years ago. It's a clip of the Smith family group's daughter participating in a piano competition. A reporter asked Mrs. Smith, I heard that you once had a biological daughter who went missing in an accident and hasn't been found yet. Mrs. Smith flatly denied, no, it was found a long time ago. Holding the award-winning Sarah in her arms, she said with pride, Sarah is my biological daughter, and that year, it had only been 2 years since I went missing, so I knew it very early on. The place I desperately want to return to is no longer my home, but Mrs. Robinson encouraged me. She told me to go uptown. She said I need to leave the mountains. She told me that only by going out can I see a broader world and meet more people, things that can't be learned from books or in the remote mountains. I thought, then I want to go. I want to become better, take my mother out of the mountains together, let Mrs. Robinson live a good life, before the start of school. My newly acquainted friend invited me to hang out. I just walked out of the residential area. I ran into Jack. I glanced at him calmly and kept walking. He stopped me, a bitter smile on his lips. Smith, Maya, is there no chance for us anymore? He glanced at me, his face full of regret. With Sarah, I just habitually placed the guilt I felt toward you onto her. I didn't bother listening to his nonsense and walked around him to leave. He tried to chase after me but was blocked by Edward, who appeared out of nowhere. Hey, young Master Jack, have some shame. What does it have to do with you if I'm talking to Maya? Jack looked a bit embarrassed. I turned around and said clearly, word by word, Jack, if you hadn't shown up, I might have still believed you were sincere about Sarah, but now, seeing you waver and contradict yourself like this, it truly makes me feel utterly disgusted. Jack's face drained of all color. What the media hasn't uncovered is, back then, the person I risked my life to save wasn't just Charles and Jack. In a way, it was because I was pulled off balance by his panic that the accident happened. The summer after my freshman year, I was accompanying Mrs. Robinson on a shopping trip when she suddenly froze, staring ahead, her eyes gradually reddening. I looked over curiously. Not far away, a middle-aged man with an elegant demeanor was also gazing at her. Lost in thought, later I found out, it turns out that he was the reason Mrs. Robinson broke ties with the Robinson family back in the day. Mrs. Robinson was once falsely accused, and it was Sam who stepped forward to silently protect her. All these years, Sam never married. He had also visited the Robinson residence several times to inquire about Mrs. Robinson's whereabouts, only to be driven away by the bodyguards. It was during my junior year of college. Mrs. Robinson and Sam held their wedding. At the wedding, the Smith family, whom they hadn't seen in a long time, also attended. In recent years, due to several poor decisions by Charles, the Smith family had gradually declined, but a starved camel is still bigger than a horse. As soon as Mrs. Smith saw me, she immediately pulled a reluctant Sarah over and said, "Sarah, say hello to your sister." Sarah didn't dare to disobey, and her voice was almost squeezed through gritted teeth. "Sister." Charles also walked over, his tone a bit unnatural. "Sister, how have you been lately? Did I hear that right?" Before I could speak, a voice full of sarcasm cut in. "Does anyone actually call the family-sponsored student sister or little sister?" Edward's voice was not quiet. All the surrounding guests heard it and looked on with amusement. The Smith family's farce of passing off their own daughter as a scholarship student back in the day was common knowledge, but everyone had maintained decorum and never exposed it to their faces. Now, with Edward bringing it up again, it felt like a public execution. At the Robinson family's gathering, who would have thought the Smiths would dare to show up? "This face is really thicker than a city wall." Mr. Smith, who had been trying to strike up a conversation, flushed bright red and could no longer continue. He pulled Mrs. Smith over. Still not embarrassed enough, Charles glared at me fiercely and scolded in a low voice, "Maya, do you really have to make such a scene with your own family?" I curled the corner of my mouth. "Young Master Smith, you shouldn't speak carelessly. My relationship with my family." I glanced at my grandfather and Mrs. Robinson seated at the head of the table, "is just fine." Edward clicked his tongue twice. "Charles, wasn't it your idea to pass off your own sister as a scholarship student back then?" "What? Now you suddenly remember she's family?" The guests exchanged meaningful glances. Charles turned pale. He practically fled in a panic. As for Jack, he originally intended to come forward and speak to me, but Jack's father slapped him. "You unfilial son, don't cause me any trouble." Jack looked at his father's livid face. In the end, they didn't dare to take another step forward. The Smith family kept a low profile for quite a while after returning. They had originally intended to wait for the turmoil to pass. Unexpectedly, another scandal emerged. The Smith family proposed to fulfill the marriage agreement with the Jack family. The Jack family refused, stating the marriage agreement was originally for the true heiress, not this impostor. The Smith family's corporation faced another crisis, and Mr. Smith had no choice but to send Sarah for the marriage alliance. Unfortunately, no one was interested in Sarah now. Eventually, the Williams family took over, but Sarah refused. The young master of the Williams family was notorious for his promiscuity. Unmarried, he already had enough illegitimate children to form a soccer team. Sarah was unwilling to jump into this fire pit. Jack avoided her once again. I didn't expect that. Sarah took an unconventional approach and actually climbed into Charles's bed in the middle of the night. This one move, the entire Smith family was thrown into an uproar. No matter how much Mrs. Smith favored her, she ultimately loved her biological son more. She grabbed Sarah, tearing and hitting her while hurling insults, completely losing her elegant demeanor. Although Charles was foolish, he truly had no ulterior motives toward Sarah. He was utterly terrified by this turn of events and fled the Smith family that very night. Packing his bags in a hurry, more than half a month had passed. Sarah sneaked into Mr. Smith's study to steal business information for her career advancement but was caught red-handed by the nanny. Mr. Smith, completely losing his patience, kicked her out of the house. Edward told me all this as a joke, and at the end, he said, "Well, don't you think they're just reaping what they sowed?" I smiled and said nothing. The Smith family might have felt a bit of guilt toward me, but this guilt was nothing compared to the selfishness and coldness in their blood. When something went wrong, they only thought about covering it up and shifting the blame, never daring to truly face their mistakes. So, that slight sense of guilt they felt toward me became the very blade they used to attack me. What I should be grateful for is, I saw through them early on. I never held any extravagant hopes for that cheap and twisted love. When Mrs. Smith gave birth to a daughter, Mr. Smith called me Maya. The Robinsons now have a true heir. Do you still think you have a chance, to them? You will always be an outsider, come back and assist your brother, and I can offer you a managerial position. I didn't want to argue with him, so I hung up the phone directly. Mr. Smith has been having a tough time lately. When Charles went out with the young master of the Williams family, he saw Sarah, who was working as a hostess, with red-rimmed eyes. He thought Sarah was not there voluntarily and tried to intervene. But not only was his leg broken, leaving him disabled. The Smith family was also implicated and faced continuous suppression. Charles is completely washed up. As for me, during university, he formed a research and development team focused on artificial intelligence. Now, shortly after graduation, the company's valuation has skyrocketed, and I've become a hot new success. Mr. Smith just wants to freeload on my achievements, I sneered, turned around and immediately took action, swallowing several key projects of the Smith family. Mr. Smith was in a sorry state. I had blocked him, so he had to send Mrs. Smith to step in. On the phone, Mrs. Smith was sobbing. Maya, don't you miss Mom and Dad? I didn't speak. Mrs. Smith chattered on about many mischievous little things I did as a child, about Mr. Smith's and her anticipation of my arrival, and their hopes for my growth. Beside her, there were two heavy breaths. I knew that Mr. Smith and Charles were also there. I curled my lips and said softly, actually, my amnesia is fake. On the other end of the phone, there was dead silence. A few seconds later, it was Mrs. Smith's hysterical, sharp voice. Maya, are you trying to drive your own parents and brother to their deaths? Aren't you afraid of being condemned by everyone? I am not afraid, but I still held back, for the sake of the 12 years they raised me. But that is all. As for what Mr. Smith said about the Robinson family, the Robinson family did not mean to exclude me from the family business. Old Mr. Robinson has always kept me by his side, personally mentoring me, clearly intending to groom me as his successor. Mrs. Robinson also fully supports this, but I refuse. I can take care of it on behalf of my sister for now. I couldn't have come this far without the support of the Robinson family. I will remember this kindness. As for inheriting the Robinson family, that won't be necessary. My future is already in my hands. I don't need to rely on anyone's inheritance to define it. Girl, what are you thinking about? Come and have some barbecue. I snapped back to reality. Mrs. Robinson was standing in the yard, smiling and waving at me. Her muteness had been cured. Beside, Uncle Sam was focused on grilling the meat. My heart warmed, and I was about to go over, but someone was faster than me. Mom, let me handle this rough work. Edward grinned cheekily and moved closer to Mrs. Robinson. I glared at him. That's my mom. Edward raised an eyebrow at me. Our mom, okay. This familiar conversation scene, we both froze in surprise at the same time, then we couldn't help but burst into laughter. Mrs. Robinson also smiled, her eyes crinkling, as the fireworks shot into the sky. I heard Edward's voice clearly in my ear. Maya, when will you consider me? I paused for a moment, then smiled. Not until you surpass me, damn. Just you wait. Fireworks bloom in the sky, dazzling and brilliant, just like my life from now on. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.